Welcome to this week's episode of the Inside Kingston podcast, where experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based in Kingston upon Thames are invited on to share their story with us. I'm your host, Amyr Rocha-Lima.
This week's episode of the Inside Kingston podcast is brought to you by Holland Hahn Wills, a financial planning and wealth management firm based in Kingston upon Thames. Holland Hahn Wills specialises in retirement planning for senior professionals and successful business owners. Visit hhw-uk.com to start feeling more relaxed and confident about your financial future.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. I'm joined today by Jo Britland. Jo is the founder of Little Writing Company, a firm that produces a range of award-winning activity books for children aged 5 to 11 years old. What's unique about Jo is how she pivoted from a successful career as a teacher, identifying a niche for her educational products and transforming it from a side gig to her full-time business. And be sure to listen to the end, where Jo shares with us her tips to build an engaged audience for your products through social media. So whether you're interested in knowing more about improving a child's writing and literacy skills, or would like to know more about what it takes to run a successful independent business, then I hope you enjoy this episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. Welcome, Jo Britland, to the Inside Kingston podcast. Jo, I'm really excited about this conversation because being a parent of two young children myself, and one of which is now at an age where she's starting to learn how to write her name, I find it fascinating to speak with education professionals like you who have experience in this phase of a child's life. And I think that, of course, more pertinently than perhaps before, in this world of COVID-19 or coronavirus, where children's primary educators are becoming their parents, I think our listeners can learn a lot from your experience on this front. So to kick off this conversation, I'd like to go back in time, if that's okay. So Jo, where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up? I grew up in Cheltenham, in Gloucestershire, in a relatively small village, actually. So, quite a small village town kind of upbringing.
Excellent. And did you go to university? And if so, what did you study?
Yeah, I went to Newcastle University, so went kind of 5 hours up north, and I studied drama, and then I did a PGCE in English and drama after my kind of university had finished. And in my university degree course, I did outreach work with children, so that's kind of where that education spark started to ignite, and then went on to do a teacher training course.
Fantastic. And could you tell us a little bit about your career before you set up your business?
Yeah, sure. So after my PGCE, because I went straight from school to A-level to university to I'd never left education, so I kind of decided to take the gap year after university, and I was about 2 months into my gap year, and a job came up at an independent boarding school in Gloucestershire, and I went for the interview and I got it, and it was spent 5 years there, and it was absolutely amazing. And during that, I kind of got my first business taste, because I ran a performing arts franchise as well as working as a teacher, and that was phenomenal, because that franchises are a great way to kind of dip your toe into business, because you are a business owner, but you've got the support of the franchisee, the network, other people that are doing a similar thing. It's not paint by numbers as such. There's a certain amount of freedom, but I really kind of ignited the spark of, I can run a business and it can be successful. And when I sold it about 4 years later, it was it'd grown and it was successful, and I felt like I'd really benefited the community and the lives of children doing performing arts. So that's kind of where it the business kind of it got ignited from. And then I, as you do, fall in love, followed my husband to London, and have worked in various independent schools in London. And I set up my business about 3 years ago when I was on maternity leave with my second child.
And am I right in saying, Jo, that your current business as it stands at the moment, it started off as a side gig that you did in the evenings? And I'm really interested in exploring that further, because I know quite a number of our listeners have their own side gigs that perhaps they would like to transform into their main business too. So I guess, could you bring us to the present and talk a little bit about your business today, but also how you set that up initially and how it went from side gig to your main business?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes businesses have to set up as side gigs because you need your income, your regular income from your job. And I was very lucky because I worked part-time. So, I could work part-time, and then I was doing the business in the evenings. And I kind of felt like I saw in my day job a gap where there were notebooks, there were workbooks, plastic, that you get kind of mass produced, but there wasn't anything that I felt supported the national curriculum, that what I was doing, that the children could kind of keep and treasure, that was sustainable on the environment, that was beautifully produced, the product that I would want my children to have at home, and was illustrated and was just really made with care and attention, really. That's kind of the gap I saw. And so I made products that I thought the children that I was teaching would love. And not only would they love, that they would keep forever. You know how you have boxes that you keep under your bed that you've still got. And I wanted to create those products that weren't just throwaway products. They were products that children could use, but then also think, God, this is beautiful. I want to keep it. So that's the kind of gap I saw. And so I started making these products in my bedroom, like all these stories begin, and for the children I taught, and then mums would ask me at the school, and it naturally developed its own, its own little fan base within, very small network. And then I went on social media, built a website, and it's taken a while. It's not just I opened it up in this 2017. It's 3 years ago, and it wasn't like I opened it up and everyone flocked to me. It wasn't like that at all. It took a while to kind of see what the market was, and also it took a while to be able to afford to get a designer on board, because I'm not a designer, I'm a teacher. So although I would do the insides of the activity books and notebooks, that a designer, and then we use a local illustrator as well, it took a while to find these people to kind of support the vision. And that, I suppose, only in the last 18 months, I'd say, has the momentum built enough to go, this is something, and this is enough to take the leap and do it full time. So that's where it started as a side gig, because I noticed that there was a little gap, a tiny niche gap maybe, but a little gap. And then it's now got 3 years later, it's got enough momentum that I now do it full time, which is amazing, and we sell online and various different online retailers, and we sell in bricks and mortar stores as well as subscription boxes. So it's now become, it does take a while. I think when I started as a side gig, you kind of have these dreams that in a month's time, but it doesn't always happen like that. You almost have to take that time to really fine tune your product and know your audience as well. It took me ages to kind of figure out who wanted it and who was buying it, and who it would benefit. So that's kind of where we are.
So, Jo, for the benefit of our listeners who haven't seen your company's products yet, tell us a little bit about the Little Writing Company and the products that it offers.
So we wanted to create a range, or I wanted to create a range that would encourage children to fall in love with writing, and to encourage children to write, but they didn't feel like they were writing. Because my son absolutely hates writing. It's, the irony is not lost that I run this company that wants children to fall in love with writing, and my own son I'm like bribing to get a pencil in his hand. So I wanted to create products that with him in mind, but also other, because some parents have children that absolutely love it and they buy our products and off they go, and other parents email me going, so we wanted to they wanted our products in order to help their children write a little bit more. But we want to create a range. So we've got story writing activity books, we've got travel journal activity books, we've got a new product just launching called Outdoor Explorer, which again encourages children to go outside on walks, and it's got recycling tips and gardening tips. And then we've got a grammar activity book, and there's one coming out for reluctant writers, and then handwriting, and all of them can be personalized with for that particular child in terms of their names on the front covers. And so we try and have that kind of edge over other kind of maybe bigger businesses, because we are smaller. We can add children's names to the handwriting booklets. For example, we can put pages in of children's names so they can practice writing their names, and it makes that child think, goodness, this is mine. It's not mass produced. It's not bought from the supermarket. It's mine to kind of special book that I can write in. So, and there we try and as much as possible, every business has got a way to go, but we're about 80-90% there to make them sustainable and to make them as much as possible from recycled, like we use recycled paper and cards, and to kind of be aware of our own footprint as well, which was really important to me. So every activity book is made to have short sections so children don't get bored. They support the national curriculum. They're from ages 5 to 11 with different activity books suiting different age children, which is all on the website and things. They're just we've got loads of different writing activities which hopefully make children feel like they're not quite writing, because they're quite fun as well. So that's what they are, and they're illustrated by a local illustrator, and then our front covers are illustrated by a lady in Yorkshire. So it's all UK printed and based, and I try and use all my freelancers. I use UK. That's kind of what it is in a nutshell, really. For
sure. So, Jo, during your teaching career, you obviously saw different kids at different age groups, and the learning journey that children go through as they progress through school. Could you tell us, from your experience, about how important it is to get children excited about writing and storytelling?
Yeah, I mean, it's like these things, again, going back to my son, because I can use him as a good example. He's very good at maths, and he loves doing maths. I could get him to do maths whenever I wanted, because he loves it. But his and I'm with the reading and writing, he's less keen on. So what I'm trying to do with him is pick things that he loves doing, because I think so he likes reading comics and things like that, and I think once you find something that your child can latch onto, regardless of the subject, it doesn't matter if it's a subject they don't like, it just got to be through a forum that they enjoy. If your child hates PE, well, actually, if dad plays or mum plays football with them, they're exercising without realizing it. And it's about finding the kind of way into that child's education. They might not think they like it, but if you can find a way to ignite their imagination and their interest in it. Someone said, interestingly, that their child doesn't like maths, but they really like cooking. So she tries to kind of sneak in maths into the cooking. Or what would that be if you took away this amount of sugar and things like that. I think we can be quite creative with how we, especially now, we're all home educators in this kind of lockdown, and it's about kind of trying to teach your children without thinking they're being taught.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way you position that, because it just goes against the sort of traditional thinking of having to fight almost against a brick wall when somebody doesn't want to do anything in a particular way. What you're suggesting is, and again, forgive me for my crude language here, but it's almost sort of tai chiing that energy into something else that they enjoy, right? But that they when they see it, they're already engaged in activities that still fall within that either math subject or within that exercise subject or within that writing subject. So, and again, being mindful of the fact that we are currently in this lockdown in the UK and, during this coronavirus period here, Jo, what tips would you have for parents so they can support and encourage their children to enjoy writing in particular, but just more generally with educational activities during this phase?
We've all been thrown into, me included, have been thrown into being the primary educators for our children for however long, it may last. And I think the key is when we're kind of educating is not to, for example, with my children, I try and do short, sharp chunks with them. I might set a timer for 15 minutes. Right, we're going to do this for 15 minutes, guys. And then after this, we can, go out in the garden, or after this. And because at school, they don't sit with a teacher over them for an hour and a half. And, we'll do an input. And then they'll be set off, independently, and we'll go round and make sure everyone's on. So it's when you're doing one-on-one, which is what we're all doing, it's about just kind of having those expectations that children can't concentrate for, much longer, depending on the age, 20 minutes, half an hour. And actually it's okay to do little chunks, little and often. And also, again, like we were saying, it's about thinking of ways you can educate your children without, standing over them and sitting down, because there is a time for that, like writing, for example. Like I got my son, he did a rainbow, like so many children are, to stick in the window at the moment, and I got him to write. He's only 5, but I got him to write rainbow, and then we wrote some words, or we thought of some words around, like how could we describe a rainbow, and it's things like that. So we were doing art, but actually we kind of turned it into a little bit of writing, and he didn't notice, so that was fine. So it's about that, you don't have to sit down and do English, maths, then, art, and then science. We can actually, because we're parents and we've never done this before, we can actually be quite flexible in our approach. There are some great free online resources at the moment. I mean, everyone has done such wonderful things with this, with their own businesses for this crisis. I've put loads of free resources on my own website, and Carol Vorderman's opened up her website for free, which is a great maths resource. Twinkle have opened up their site for free, which you usually have to pay a subscription to. And then for younger children, there's great apps. There's Teach Your Monster to Read. Again, you can set your level depending on the age of your child. So if you're kind of 5, 6, 7, that's a really good one. And then there's Doodle Maths, again, maths ones. So there's loads of resources out there on the apps, on the iPads, if your child has access to one. And apps and iPads are really good for an afternoon. I try and do the writing and the kind of nitty gritty stuff in the morning when they've got a bit more kind of focus to them. But I think it's about having our own expectations as parents about what we expect from our children, and also we've all got jobs, we're trying to work from home, and how much can they do independently, how much do they need us. We could set them off on something and we'll say, right, you've got 15 minutes, and then come back and show me, and then that gives you 15 minutes to answer an email, or kind of try and do a bit of work as well. So but writing wise, it's again, it depends on the age of the child. We've got activity books, which again we hope that the children do very independently, because it guides them so carefully through it. And if there's loads of, again, on Twinkle, you've got worksheets you can print out, which again you hope that children of a certain age, kind of 7+, can do that quite independently for 15 minutes without too much input, and you just need to be supportive when they've finished it, and make the right ooh and ah noises. So yeah, I think it's about trying to get our children to enjoy the learning at home, because it is a weird environment for them to be in, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, we've got to teach them, but it's the telly's on, and we've all got our kind of relaxing clothes on and things like that. So it's really difficult at the moment.
I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Jo, and also sharing your expertise around some of those resources. And obviously, for the benefit of our listeners, I'll make sure I link up to those on the show notes. So thank you very much for that. Jo, let me just switch gears on you slightly, because in preparation for this conversation, I obviously was looking at your website and your social media profile, and I noticed that on Instagram in particular, you have a really good way of not only showcasing your products, but also interacting with the people in your network. So could you share with us your thought process on using social media to maintain professional relationships and also to attract new business?
Yeah, so we Instagram's can be a slow burner. Again, it's like opening an online store. You expect to go on Instagram and then people will just flock to you, and it just doesn't, especially with the new algorithms, it just doesn't work like that. It is about slowly building a network. I probably spend too much time on Instagram than I'd like to admit, but it is about kind of commenting on other small businesses. I've got a really strong network now of small businesses that not only have I met at trade shows and markets and things like that, but that I've got a WhatsApp group with, and again that takes time to build up. So it is about commenting businesses that you really like and admire, following them, seeing what they're up to, also seeing what your competitors are up to, not in a kind of, I'm going to copy that or anything like that, but just it's a really nice way of just being aware of what your industry is doing as well, and where it's moving to. I'll give you an example. Our handwriting notebooks, they used to have a lot of simple letter formation, but actually I noticed as an education industry, we're moving much more towards cursive writing a lot earlier. So we redesigned those quite recently. But the only reason I don't teach reception, I've never taught reception. It's kind of older children. The only reason I knew that is because I had a real ear to the ground about what was going on in education, and hearing feedback from parents as well. And that's all through social media. And it's just a really nice way of customers reaching out to you, via direct messaging. I get a few inquiries in the daytime, especially at the moment, and it's a really nice way of quickly just messaging back to them. And I try and mix it between product shots and photos of my family as well, because it's that old saying, people buy of people, don't they? And they like to know who you are. And when people message me, I've never met them, like customers, they'll say, "Hi Jo, I've seen this product and I was just wondering, X, Y, and Z." And it's their way of feeling that, and they do know me. I'm very, very friendly on social media. I always like customers' photos, especially when they share them of our products. And so I use Instagram as a real platform, and I feel like I've got a very engaged audience. And I don't think it's about numbers these days. I see businesses with 50,000 followers and they might have very few comments or very few. It's all about your engagement at the moment, and Facebook is a slightly different beast, because we've kind of delved into Facebook ads quite recently, and which has been really good in terms of sales and things like that. But I pay kind of maybe less attention to Facebook these days. Instagram is, but Pinterest is another one that people underestimate. Pinterest is it's up and coming. It's patronizing. Pinterest is already, at the top, coming up. But I have lots and lots of traffic from Pinterest, and I barely pay any attention to that. So that's a really good one for if you're a product-based business or interiors or anything like that. To get yourself on Pinterest and really, think about your keywords, and you can push quite a lot of traffic very easily on Pinterest. I think is one that's quite often ignored. Me included. I've only kind of been on there the last kind of 6 months and stuff. So all three of them have their place, and it's just being engaged with them. And also, when you've got your favorite like Instagram and things, it's quite easy to go down that rabbit hole and not emerge for an hour. So
absolutely. Well, what I find fascinating about that, Jo, is with previous guests in completely unrelated fields to yours, they've all basically been taking the same sort of strategy, but within their own fields. So the chefs that we've interviewed here for the podcast, they have their own study groups where they sit down and actually look at each other's recipes and look at the ingredients people are using and the ingredients people are looking for, because that's what's popular in cooking shows or what have you. So this whole idea of, it doesn't matter which field you're in, having your ear to the ground and understanding the direction in which your customers are going or your particular field of expertise is going, and being able to adapt products or adapt services to that is super important. So I appreciate you sharing that. Jo, what are some of the key business lessons that you've learned throughout your life?
I think the main one, and maybe someone's listening that's just started a business or wants to start a business, is that it does take time, and that's not to kind of put a dampener on things or discourage. It's almost to encourage that actually, if you started a business and you're 6 months in and think, goodness me, there's tumbleweed out there, or there's not a lot of sales, or I'm not getting much traction on social media. It does take time, and it takes time to create your brand. My brand now that you see on social media was nothing like it was 3 years ago, because you almost need that process, especially if you start off as a side gig like lots of people do, and it takes a while to kind of get that traction and get that. I like to think of it as a seesaw, where you're at the kind of, it's only when it's after a kind of a few months, a year, and it starts to tip the balance, and you're kind of up on the seesaw now. But for a while, it felt like everything was kind of on the other side against you. So it takes time to build that fan base, like you were saying about Instagram. That takes time. It takes time to get your face out there. It takes time to go to trade shows. It takes time to network. And network's a horrible word. I don't like it, but on that kind of especially in Kingston and things like that, it takes time. So that's one big business lesson. The second is, I think it's don't be afraid to evolve your business as you get to know it better. As I said, it looks completely different, or my business does, to 3 years ago, and it's because it's evolved naturally as I found out more about what the product wants. The best piece of advice I got, which I'll share, I can't claim to have made it up, but was just don't wait for it to be perfect, just get it out there. And get it out there and see what, and that's exactly what I did. It wasn't perfect. I mean, the first run of the story writing notebooks we did, there was a typo in there. I mean, how embarrassing. They all had to go. I mean, I think I sold 2 before realized. And so it's that thing, isn't it, of get it out there, see what sells. There's some stuff that I was selling 3 years ago that is, that's gone because it just didn't get any traction, didn't get any sales. And it's, don't wait for it to be perfect. Just put it out, see what goes, and then evolve as your business does. It will show you the way. Like, I didn't believe it at the time, but businesses do show you what works and what doesn't, and they will guide you to the right direction. And also it's investing in, like I said before, I'm not a designer. I haven't designed the front covers. That's all been outsourced. I haven't designed my logo. That's been outsourced. And it's realizing what you're good at as a business owner and what other people are good at. And there's no shame in employing and paying freelancers or members of your staff that are brilliant at it to do that, because it elevates your business. I think there was a time when I thought I could do it all, and I couldn't, not to the level that I needed it to be. So that's a really good tip. Just do it. And then if you can, if money allows, outsource what you can't do, or you can't do to a professional standard at least.
Yeah, those are great lessons, Jo, and I really appreciate you sharing that. When you look back at your career journey to date, what are you most proud of?
I think when I started, when I kind of started up, bought the franchise, the theatre arts franchise, I was only 22, and I was the youngest ever franchisee in that company, and looking back, that was a real turning, like a pivoting moment, I think, and gave me the business bug. So I think that's something I'm incredibly proud of, that so young, I just did something. And it took me a while after I sold that franchise to find my next business. You know, there were a few kind of false starts and, I'll do this. And it took me a while to kind of find Little Writing Company. But when I found it, it's been amazing. So I think running that franchise is a really proud moment career-wise. And also, yeah, I'd say starting Little Writing Company, because it is, when you first put out your business, probably like you did with the, you know, your podcast, when you start telling people about it and you haven't really got anything behind you, like you might not have interviewed anyone and I might not have sold anything, and it gets a bit like, do people think I'm mad? Do people, you know, think that, you know, this will never work? And so it's that I'm proud for just doing it. You know, I think, because that's all you can do, isn't it? And if it fails, it fails. But at least, you know, we did it. You tried, and so I think there's nothing, you know, prouder than just going for it. If you've kind of found your idea that you think and you love that will work.
Well, absolutely, we're kindred spirits on that front, Jo. The first few guests for the Inside Kingston podcast, I literally went to their place of work and asked them to be on the podcast and pitched them the idea. So there we go. Jo, what next for you and your business? Are there any projects in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Yeah, well, some I can't tell you about.
All right, okay, that's pretty cool.
So, which is telling, maybe, but yeah, there's new products coming out. There's a few things, you know, that confidentiality and all the rest of it. That wasn't quite the right word, confidentiality, that I can't say yet. But there are a few things bubbling under the surface with wholesale orders and things like that. I don't tend to kind of push the wholesale side of things. Shops tend to, which is very sweet and very nice, tend to kind of find me through Instagram and approach me. But it's something I'd really wanted to push this year, which I still hope to do when obviously we're kind of out of our current situation. But so yeah, I think wholesale side is something I'd quite like to push, and yeah, a few new products, and just keep up that brand awareness. You know, every month, every year, it kind of grows and gets more traction with it. So it's just keeping up. I've got lots of freelancers which are great, and they work, you know, they do their projects and it's lovely working for them. But I'd love to be in a position, and I'm not quite there yet, to have someone with me and employed by me and that can work with me on it, because there's lots of times when orders are stacking up that I'm the packer, I'm the poster, I'm the, you know, doing the addresses, and you spend a lot of time you know, in your business. It's that saying, isn't it? A lot of time in your business instead of on it. So it'd be quite nice to get to the stage maybe towards the end of the year that we can kind of, I can become a we, and we can maybe get someone, especially around Christmas, someone as another member of the team, which would be lovely. So yeah, so that's, who knows what the future holds, but hopefully it's good. It's
exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, Jo, the fact that you're busy and already thinking of expanding that way just speaks volumes to where you've taken this business from 3 years ago to where it is today. So a massive congratulations on that front. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, that's true.
Excellent.
That's true.
As we start to wrap up, I'd like to ask you a few quick fire questions that our listeners are always interested in. So what do you do to relax outside of the office?
Do you know, me and my husband, we watch far too much telly. We watch Netflix. If you named some kind of cable, or we've got Netflix, we've got Disney Plus has just come out. We've got all of those things. We both work very hard. Everyone does, but we spend a lot of time in front of the telly, and it's because we used to go to the cinema quite a lot, and then of course we have children, and that goes out the window. So we still try and watch films, and we're a big fan of a kind of crime series and things like that. So we do that quite a lot to relax. And also we're so lucky living in Kingston because we've obviously got Canberra Gardens, Bushy Park, Richmond Park. So we do we try and take the kids on walks and bike rides, and if the weather's nice like this. So yeah, TV or out. That's
excellent. Well, on that front, are there any movies or TV shows that you've recently watched that you would recommend to our listeners?
We are, and I hope you haven't seen it and going to ruin it for me, but we're about 6 episodes into The Stranger on Netflix, which is a British, I haven't heard
of that one yet.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's a British production, and I forget his name, Richard Armitage, that's his name. He's the kind of star of it. He played Thorin in The Hobbit. And yeah, so he's kind of, and Jennifer Saunders is in it. And yeah, it's just really, really good. So we were halfway through that, and what did we watch? Oh, we watched, we've got Apple TV. There's only about 6 shows on Apple TV, but we watched the morning programme with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoons. That was brilliant.
Okay.
And I could go all day. You see, you've got me.
No, those are great recommendations because I haven't seen either of those, so I'll make sure I put those on the to watch list for sure. Are there any books that you've recently read that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Do you know, I because of my kind of passion as a teacher, I read a lot of children's books, which is really sad in lots of ways, but really I think I'd like to think it's quite endearing, but I think it's sad. So any David Walliams books my son absolutely loves. They're a little bit too old for him, but for any other parent of kind of 7+, they are brilliant because they don't take themselves too seriously, and there's a little bit for the grown-ups in there as well. There's a bit of a wink wink nudge nudge quite a few times that are funny.
Finally, where can people go to find out more about you and your business?
So you can go on Instagram at Little Writing Company, and or you can go to our website and Facebook. And also, if you just Google Little Writing Company, I've done various kind of interviews, and I've never done a podcast. This is the first podcast, but I've done various different interviews, and meeting the business owner and things like that. So there's loads of, over the years, there's quite a lot of information out there about kind of the brand, but Instagram's a good place to start if people are on there, and if not, Facebook's a really good place to start. And you can it's kind of finding out a bit more about what we're doing. And also we've got so many blogs as well to support parents, not just during this time, which we've kind of put quite a lot of blog posts and free resources out, but just generally supporting parents through their child's education, because it's, even when they're at school, it's still a lot of responsibility on us to kind of support them during their transition into each year group, and what they should be doing, what they shouldn't. And there's quite a lot of I find sometimes what I'm getting feedback is parents can be quite confused about what they should be doing at home, when they should be doing it. This is as well as when they're going to school. So it's, the blog's a really good way of us supporting parents, and about handwriting tips, spelling tips, as well as just fun blog posts. We did one about how to support your child in being more organized, and I think it was our most read blog read blog post, because everyone was like, yes, I think I could help my child be more organized. I know I certainly could, because I do everything for them. I'm kind of guilty as charged, really.
Yeah. And for the benefit of our listeners, I'll make sure that I link up to all those resources on the show notes. Jo, thank you for joining us here on the Inside Kingston podcast. It's been a pleasure getting to know your story.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's been really, really good. I was weirdly nervous before we got going, but now I've just not stopped talking. So,
oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jo. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. Make sure to check out our guests' website, pay them a visit, and help spread the word about what they're doing. If you have any questions or know someone who should be a guest on the show, please feel free to get in touch. I would also love it if you could go to iTunes and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We work hard to bring on some great guests, and getting a review from you is one way to help the podcast rate well on iTunes so that others can find and enjoy the show too. Thanks for listening.